Okay, welcome to this webinar on the talk-down intervention of safe wards. It's going to follow the usual format. I'll make a bit of a presentation on the intervention under consideration, what it is and what it isn't, and the strengths and weaknesses and implementation difficulties. And at any point we'll lapse into discussion and debate about any difficulties or enhancements that we can make to this particular intervention and what people's experience has been. So the talk down intervention, first of all, a few pictures. I think one of those is from Keats ward, and the other, why is that shifting automatically? You really can't win with this software sometimes. Okay, there's a few pictures. One's from the one in the middle, I think, is from Keats ward, and I think the one on the top right, I think that might be from Taliesin. Do you, or anybody recognise the figures in that picture? May or may not be. They might both be from Keats ward or from elsewhere. So what's Talk Down all about? What's it trying to achieve? What we're trying to do is expand the skill and strategy set of staff in relation to de-escalation. So that means building their emotional self-management skills, their self-monitoring, self-awareness, and psychological understanding of patients' behaviour, improve their selection of strategies used to de-escalate patients, and lastly, to improve team cohesion, skills sharing, and mutual support. The research on which this is based is, again, the talking with acutely psychotic patients work that Jeff Brennan and I and others did when we interviewed those nurses who were voted by their colleagues to be the most skilled at interacting with people who were most severely ill. And when we asked them to talk about dealing with an angry, irritable, and aggressive patient, and what their interaction skills were, they came out with a vast range of different interventions. What was noticeable from that was that, as I've said many times before in relation to other things to do with inpatient psychiatric nursing, even the most expert staff only have a narrow access to the skills. So the things that one expert would say would be different from things that another expert nurse would say, and they would be different again from things that a third expert nurse would say. So everybody has a little slice of the cake, but few people have access to it all, which means even for expert nurses, there's a whole lot to learn and practice and to experience in order to expand the skill set. And if we can expand everybody's skill set in relation to de-escalation, expand everybody's set of techniques, then they're more likely to be able to choose the one that works. You know, if they go down one line and it's not working with a patient, they've got another 10 alternatives to use, rather than just plodding on with using the same one or two over and over again. So it was about expanding that skill set. There was one other track of research which showed that for de-escalation we had a particularly narrow view. Yes, and that was over the period of time that we were collating our literature review on all of conflict and containment, not just aggression but absconding, etc., etc., etc. We were trying to collect an encyclopedic knowledge of what constituted de-escalation skills. So there's lots and lots of talk about de-escalation, but not so much definition of what it is. So we collated a vast range of what was considered in the research and even in the clinical literature as well, considered to be de-escalatory strategies. And then we put them together in this model so that we had an overall picture of what constituted de-escalation. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on just this one slide, but it says exactly where all of this comes from and what the rationale is for the whole intervention. The last little bit on that slide there, the point at the bottom about improving team cohesion, skills sharing, and mutual support amongst the staff, was the way in which we deliver this intervention. So we provide the staff with the poster, which gives the talk down model, if you like, the process of de-escalation, and basically organizes all of these different skills that we found from the expert nurses and from the literature reviews into some kind of sensible pattern. We give the wards this. Then the wards elect their top de-escalator, and that person takes the other members of staff through the poster, illustrating it from their own personal experience of de-escalation. So the other part of this is about triggering the staff to share their expertise and knowledge, because that was something that we felt we weren't doing very well on acute psychiatric wards. It's done by example, so people observe each other, but we seldom sit down, I think, on an acute psychiatric ward and really share in depth a more considered and reflective picture of what we think our skills are and what our good strategies are. And this was this method of implementing the talk down intervention was an idea of getting that kind of process started. Interestingly, there are other interventions on the longer list that didn't make it into the actual top 10 of the Safe Wards intervention that were more specifically geared at skills sharing and mutual support. And if you're interested, you might want to go and look at, let me see, what did we call them? Expertise multiplier and mutual support surge. They're both available on the website. Okay, so here is the poster.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the Manchester University research in terms of the setting of the background of it, the Owen Price work.
Yes. Well, you see, just before the Safe Wards trial started, Owen Price and John Baker also did a literature review on de-escalation. And they asked me to be involved in that project, and I said to them, I can't do so really because I have a de-escalation targeted intervention which is based on our own literature review, and I don't want to reveal it before we actually use it for the first time in the Safe Wards trial, so I had to take a back seat. So their work kind of ran in tandem. And what's interesting about their paper is when you look at it, it contains almost the same content in terms of what constitutes de-escalation. Well, it would do because they were looking at the same body of literature and abstracting it. What's different, I suppose, about their literature review is that they didn't try and organize that into an overall pattern or model, whereas we did. And our pattern and model that you can see on the screen now, that's informed by our literature review and research work on skills in de-escalating patients, but it's also informed by our wider research investigations, and it's influenced by the overall Safe Wards model. So parts of the Safe Wards model are in this talk down tips poster as well. Seeing as we're pausing for questions, we've got Julie Blackburn who's joined us. Have you got any questions, Julie? Are you there with us, Julie?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Hi. Got any questions for us so far?
Not at this very moment. Oh, sorry, I think I went. Oh.
No, you're here.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm back again. Not at the moment. I'll just listen for a while and then I might have some questions.
Okay, I'm going to switch you all off for the moment and progress onto the next slide. There might be some value, and there might be some value at some point in actually going through this whole poster and looking at each individual item, because each individual item is worthy of some consideration about when it might work, when it might not work, will it work particularly with this sort of patient or person, will it not work with another? Either in certain contexts, is this thing the right thing to do, or it might be the wrong thing to do? With de-escalation, really, there are no hard and fast rules because it's a very interactional and interpersonal thing between you and the person that you're interacting with. And that means it engages your whole persona and also all of the things that go to make up the individual angry patient on the ward and what they're angry about and the particular context, etc., etc. Let's move on. If you want, we can always come back and start to do that, but I have a feeling that that might take us some hours if we went through in that level of detail. Let's talk about talk-down fidelity. What's the difference between a ward which really does do the talk-down intervention and one that does it in a very superficial and ineffective way? So a good intervention really does expand the de-escalation skills and increases the psychological understanding of staff, capitalizing on the best existing team skills and building team cohesion at the same time. I think that psychological understanding component's really quite important in there. It's about understanding patients' behavior and its contexts and sources and meaning rather than judging that behavior as being bad and morally reprehensible and in need of punishment. So a good psychological understanding, it builds a good psychological understanding of patients. And it's a crystallization of de-escalation skills packaged for ward-based teaching and promotions. And that's what it is. What it isn't is just hanging up a poster and hoping that staff read it and understand it. Although hanging up a number of these posters will, I think, have some impact because anybody who goes and looks at them and anybody who reads to any degree the contents of these might have small gains in understanding, might pick up some small hint of something that they could try out in a different context. So it might make some difference, but it's certainly not going to have the same impact as if it's not packaged with the whole training and sharing and mutual support idea, which I would hope really would overflow from the individual training sessions about de-escalation into all wider team discussions and reflection on actual de-escalations and actual thinking about how to deal with patient A in circumstances B. So that, not just hanging a small poster, and it's not something that happens anyway. Patient de-escalated is often a myth. Now, I didn't write this. Jeff Brennan wrote this. So I agree, but I might agree with that for different reasons than Jeff thinks. I'm going to put Jeff on the spot now. Jeff Brennan, why do you think patient was de-escalated is often a myth?
I think it's something that you often see in notes where it'll say somebody was agitated and just the line is patient was de-escalated with no context, with no kind of no idea of how, or, it's just patient was agitated, patient was de-escalated. It's almost like a throwaway line, and I think it's just about the idea that is it has no meaning really. It's either, and sometimes I remember once sort of when I was a kind of charge nurse going in and saw that, and I said, "What does that mean?" I said, "I'll give him a cigarette." And it was like, well, okay, fair enough. Which, might have been a fair enough strategy at that. Can I just add, at that time, you could smoke on a ward. But it's, it has multiple meanings. But it's kind of a lazy note-keeping thing, which is kind of crept into the parlance, which actually has no meaning. So that's what I meant. And also, the person wasn't actually de-escalated. What happened was they were deflected, and then 20 minutes later, an hour later, you had the same problem again. There wasn't a process of trying to sort out the problem. All there was a process of was trying to stop the patient from being annoying, to be frank. And I think that's not what de-escalation is actually about.
Right. I think the thing that I responded to here was not so much the patient was de-escalating, but the assumption that this happens anyway, and that we already know everything that we need to know about de-escalation, and we go away on our regular courses, and you have nothing new to teach us. And this is all stuff that we learned ages ago. And I already know everything about de-escalation. There's nothing that this poster or you or anybody on this ward can teach me about it. Well, first of all, I know from the research we conducted and from the literature review that that can't possibly be true, because we took even the expert nurses and they didn't know everything about de-escalation. So if the acknowledged experts don't know everything, then the chances are that the average person on an acute psychiatric ward who thinks they know all about de-escalation being right is small. And my challenge to such a person would be, right, fine, you know all of this. Okay, I'll take the de-escalation poster and won't show you. You tell me all the de-escalation skills that you know and use regularly. And then find out how many of them they can actually name. And if that's not convincing enough, then I would suggest to that person who believes that they know all about de-escalation to take that poster themselves to other members of staff who they have worked with for some time and ask them which of all those de-escalation skills those colleagues have seen them use on a regular basis. And of course, we know all about de-escalation. All of those colleagues should be able to tell us, yes, I've seen you use all of this all of the time. Unfortunately, we know that that's not what they're going to say. So in reality, we already know everything there is to know about de-escalation. Don't believe it. I really, really don't believe it. I can look at that poster and find new things to reflect on and think about in relation to my own practice. And these things are actually extremely hard to learn in many cases. It's even one thing to know theoretically that it's a good idea to manage your own emotional responses and not show anxiety or irritation. It's another thing to be able to do it. And that's almost a lifetime of learning. I can tell you, I've seen some people, some colleagues on psychiatric wards that are a million times better at this than I am. Let's continue, or maybe you want to pause there. Does either of you want to say anything? Put your hand up if you want to say anything at this point. My attendees are quiet, so I shall move on to the next slide. Talk down, long-term implementation. So we have this set up. We give wards the poster, and the idea is they elect their top de-escalator, and the top de-escalator takes every other member of staff through the poster. So say that process would take, probably within the context of a busy acute psychiatric ward, that might take up to 3 months for that person to take everybody through that individual poster. What then happens in the longer term? So whilst the poster can be continuously displayed, the training component could be done once or twice, with potentially a renewal when there's a significant staff turnover. So if you have new staff on the ward, the new staff can be taken through the poster again. Or if you want to refresh the intervention, you could ask the de-escalation expert on your ward to do it again several times, or you could pick an alternative, in fact, de-escalation expert and ask them to do it with all of the other member of staff. There's only a fixed number of times, I suppose, over which you can do this. So what I used to say, and you can see I do say in this scale, is incorporation of this intervention into local aggression prevention training thus seems desirable. Now, there's a lot to say about this incorporation into local training, because I had a naive idea at the beginning that what you could do would be to improve the de-escalation component of regular prevention and management of aggression training courses, the typically 5-day ones that everybody gets in the UK and rather typically in good practice in hospitals around the world, that you could incorporate the contents of this poster into that. But I've now sat down with and looked at the training content of a number of the commercially provided courses, particularly CPI and MABO, and some of the others as well. And what you start to realize when you look down at what these courses cover over their 5 days, there's an awful lot in there. And there isn't a lot of space for pure discussion of de-escalation. And then what the trainers, and these are really experienced and people who I would respect, tell me is that you have on these 5-day courses people with a vast range of different abilities and skills. Many of them, for example, are healthcare assistants or unqualified nurses who've not done anything like this before. So actually all these courses end up teaching is very, very rudimentary and very, very basic skill set around de-escalation. And there is no way in which this training is thought about in terms of lifelong learning. So even the renewal courses are about renewing the basic information. They're not about taking people to the next stage. They're not about making people advanced de-escalation practitioners. So I think ultimately, for a long-term implementation of TalkDown, we need to give much more thought to producing a training that actually supports the development over a long period of time of difficult and advanced de-escalation / interaction skills for nurses who are working in those environments. And that's not what we're doing at the moment. Most of the training that we're delivering to people is kind of don't sue me, don't investigate me, don't say that I've never told our staff to do this sort of training from a managerial point of view. And that's probably not the best approach. So before I say anything that my managerial colleagues would castigate me for, I think I'll move on to the next point. Which would be an alternative use or finding alternative uses of the poster. And one of the wards in our trial did find an alternative use for it, and they used it in post-incident debriefing of the staff. So they would, once an incident had occurred, they would go back and look at the poster, and they would say, what did we use here? What did we not use? What could we have tried that we didn't try in these particular circumstances? And that enabled them all to do that skill set building and mutual support. I suppose the other thing that we've seen wards do is use it in training and role play, which is also another option. I'm going to throw this open to the floor now. Any ideas from the floor on long-term implementation? Please stick your hand up if you wish to make a contribution. Okay, Jeff, you are on.
I was just thinking about this concept of the advanced. What was it you said? The advanced practice de-escalator.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite. That kind of caught me as a maybe something within organisations, champions. You would probably want to. It would be good to kind of give some flesh to what that would look like and how somebody could actually start to get evidence that they were an advanced practice de-escalator. But I suppose all the time you're talking about, I was also thinking that it would be fascinating to get some kind of not professional, it's the wrong word, some expert patient opinion on this. It'd be fascinating the next stage would be to go to patients and say, have this been practiced on you and the kind of effects of it? Because I reckon there's a whole story there that we need to kind of include, because I'm thinking about, because Mind did a thing a couple of years ago about how awful restraint was in one thing and another, and I think there's something here about how positive this is in terms of receiving it as an intervention as well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes, I mean there's a whole host of things hiding behind these statements. I mean, one is that we need a whole host of more research around de-escalation. There's hardly any research de-escalation and what are successful strategies. There is some of these descriptions of strategies, the ones that we've collated into the poster. There's not a lot of research on what constitutes effective de-escalation. No research at all, or hardly any research at all, into what are the effective ways of communication during de-escalation moments, particularly with people who are suffering from an acute psychosis. And this is where it connects to that little online course we tried to develop, Jeff, and the wider stuff from talking with acute patients. And there's nothing, we know nothing about how to best to educate people. You know, it's all very well giving people a poster and giving a list of stuff on the poster, but that isn't educating or training people or necessarily equipping them with these skills. What's the best way of actually helping people develop and incorporate these skills in a seamless and effective way into their practice? Is it telling them about them? Is it making them memorize them? Is it forcing them to do role plays with feedback? What's the best? How do you help people to do this? And particularly with the emotional management stuff, how do you help people not be afraid in those frightening situations? Or how do you help people not show? How do you help people make their fear invisible in those situations and still confidently manage them? I mean, we know very little about all of this stuff. If I was starting my research career again now, this might be one of the places where I would start. I'm going to switch you off, Jeff, unless you've got a quick response on any of that.
Well, the only quick response I would have is look at other professions. I mean, I was the one image you have of how do we train people. I have the image of the riot police, where they actually stick policemen in riots and say, and talk them through, it's not so much role plays as simulation exercises where people have a chance to practice in with actors or whatever, or kind of set up situations. The fire brigade do it, police do it. There's a question here of, can we not actually, because people are going to face this in their careers, it's unavoidable. So maybe we shouldn't dance around it. Maybe we should say, look, let's take you through it in a control situation so that when you meet it in real life, it won't be so terrifying.
Well, now that you're talking to me, I'm thinking about systematic desensitization.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe what people are going to need is to construct their own hierarchies of situations that they would find difficult. And there might be some guided imagery work to be done as well in terms of helping people prepare for these situations. The fear control type stuff, the exposure of people to acting situations, I think that's good, but it doesn't need to be done repeatedly under controlled circumstances. So that's a big investment. And how do you actually provide that for somebody? Anyway, big questions. We're not going to answer them in this little webinar. So I'm going to switch you off and move on to the next one, which is, does Talkdown need any adjustments for specialists areas? Well, in child and adolescent mental health services, I don't think much, but I did wonder whether there are age-specific de-escalation techniques. In fact, whether there are activities that one would do with children in a de-escalatory capacity that you would not do with adults. I mean, I've never worked in CAMS. Jeff, you're sticking your hands up. Go on then. Go for it. Oh, hang on. I'll switch your microphone on. There you go, Jeff. You've got the floor.
Just one thing. There is a line in the respect and empathy box that says, "Don't speak to them like they're a child," which has been pointed out to me in every CAMS presentation I've ever done. So we would need to take that line
out. Yes, but even children don't like to be talked to as if they're younger than they are.
Well then, that's a very good point, actually. So I suppose we would say, I don't know how you'd rephrase it, but have respect for their age or something, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go straight into the older age stuff, because the same thing applies. There are kind of culturally appropriate ways for older people to be spoken to that need to be respected. So there needs to be some adjustment of the de-escalatory statements. But there are also, I think, there's a whole range. I think specifically with people with dementia, there's a whole range of thinking about de-escalation, which is quite specific. It's specific to people who are disoriented and who've lost a lot of cognitive function, and it probably relies a lot more on touch or not touching, on knowing when to disengage from a person. I know that there has been here in South London and the Maudsley, there's been some work done on specific prevention and management of violence and aggression training, or control and restraint training for use with the elderly, which I've been very, very impressed with. So I think there's quite a lot of thought needed around that. I don't think it's as easy as putting up the talk down poster and saying that this applies across the board to older people. So that needs some thought. Adjustment for forensic, I don't think there is any required at all. Anybody want to say anything about adjustments of talk down for specialist settings? Julie, let me switch you on, Julie. You have the floor, Julie.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Thank you. Look, I'm here in Melbourne. I've done a lot of work with at a youth mental health service, and I often think that about CAMS. You know, youth, I think, sometimes gets bundled into that, and there's a difference, I think, with working with someone in the adult, and then working with someone who's a young person, we like to call them, and I think there's lots of things to be considering, and I guess they're cultural things, but also things about what their lifestyle is, and it's about being respectful, I think, a lot of it. But I often think that youth thing would be a good another point in that adjustments slide.
Yeah, well, young people are particularly sensitive, aren't they, to
particularly, yes,
to authority, or to
That's
any
right.
attempt to take authority over them.
That's right. Yeah.
Because they're at the point where they're becoming independent and defending their independence and individuality.
That's right. Yeah.
So I suppose that I would see the talk down contents as applying particularly to interactions with young people.
Yes, no, I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment. What you said before about the training aspects, and one of like, you know, I think, you know, at the moment we're implementing safe waters here in Victoria, and one of the services I'm working with is use the talk down poster in that post incident, and that worked very well. And I think the person talking got quite a buzz out of that how well it actually worked to go through the poster and look at all the what the person had done through the incident.
Oh, that was good. So
yeah, no, it was very good.
Right, let's progress on. What are the difficulties, issues, and potential enhancements of talk down? Well, firstly, I thought a lot is going to depend on your elected trainer if you use this the training model that we're suggesting with the poster, which is that the staff elect their top de-escalator, who then takes everybody through the poster. That then makes a lot of the success of this intervention hinge on the actual abilities of that person, and they they're going to be variable, aren't they? They're going to come from different backgrounds and have a different range of experience, knowledge, and expertise. So some of the success of this intervention is going to depend on them. Whether there are ways around that, you might want to elect a pair of top de-escalators, although of course that's a bigger resource than just a single person. Or you might want to opt for the group consideration of the poster in some way, some more egalitarian approach, whereas you put 3 people together with the poster and ask them to discuss with each other the contents. Not too sure, but there's just some ideas around that. The incorporation into regular training and updates we've talked about, and I think we need a much more sophisticated view of education around de-escalation. Making sense of the poster content. Yeah, I'm making sense of my own notes for this presentation. I'm not entirely sure what I meant by that. Making sense of the poster. Well, I suppose the poster contents are all kind of summary statements, and they don't necessarily explain themselves or their relevance. And it may be that some of those contents are not as easy to make full sense of as others. Maybe that's why I thought that. There is a document associated with this intervention, which is called Staying Open, Friendly and Positive, which gives some hints, some early hints about emotional self-management, really. I think that is a fairly sophisticated document, but what we've not provided anybody with, really, we've just provided you with the document. We haven't given you any ideas about how you might use it, other than to give it to people and suggest that they read it. So I think there's probably some room for quite a bit of enhancement of this particular intervention around that document, or around taking that document and developing it a little bit more. Maybe it's not as good as it could be. It's a first stab, really, at providing people with some basis on which to reflect about their own emotional responses to patient behaviours and how those relate to de-escalation. Our next point really is about these lifetime journeys and attaining insight, growth, change, and mature confidence, stability in the face of threat. One little de-escalation refresher and a look at the talk down poster is not going to provide you with that mature confident ability in the confident stability in the face of threat. It will undoubtedly contribute to that. Will undoubtedly contribute to your degree of success in de-escalation, because it's going to equip you with more skills and insight into what you're doing. But it's not going to take you from A to Z. It's not going to take you from beginning practitioner all the way through to some of the experts in inpatient nursing that I've seen in the course of my career, of which incidentally I'm not one. I think it's just we need to view this as one step. This is a way of lifting ourselves up 1 or 2 rungs further on the ladder from where we are now to where we perhaps eventually want to be. Now, there's quite a bit of values work, particularly empathy and respect for the patient, that are there in this overall talk down model, which makes us think about how you inculcate those values in a team. I mean, what the talk down poster is saying to you actually is that these are functional values. You know, even if you don't feel much respect for patients or the patient that you're dealing with, even if you don't like them or don't even think that's a good value for you and not something that you adhere to, what the poster's telling you is if you want to successfully de-escalate somebody and prevent a violent incident, show respect for the patient and try and work on understanding the patient's point of view, and your de-escalation is more likely to be successful. So from a self-preservation point of view, this value is a good idea. That's what it's saying fundamentally. But if you want a whole team, a whole psychiatric ward, which is based on the show of and really deep, genuine respect for patients, then how are you going to achieve this? You know, if you're sitting there as a ward manager, what do you actually do in order to nudge your team, get them moving in the direction of increased respect for patients? Well, you can have arguments about the show of respect. You can give individual nurses feedback on respect for patients. So that can be about positively saying to somebody when they've been really respectful for a patient to a patient in difficult circumstances, acknowledging that publicly and interpersonally to that person so that they're more likely to do it again. Can also mean challenging members of your team who are doing the reverse. And then there's what each of us can do in terms of genuine display of the values that we want to see. So if we want everybody else on the team to show this deep ingrained respect for patients, not just during de-escalation, but the whole of the time, then we have to show that ourselves. We have to be that role model. And which of these is the best way of accomplishing the overall respectful team, the overall understanding team? I don't know, actually, and it's a matter worthy of some degree of thought. And in fact, there's no research on this, so far as I know, either. Our last point there is about using safe wards to implement safe wards, which is a point that I've made in many presentations, really. You can't get people to do de-escalation if your means of teaching them to do de-escalation is not respectful and is done in a way which doesn't control your own irritation and anxiety. So if you go irritably to your fellow members of staff and get angry with them about their lack of de-escalation skills, and angrily and irritably are telling them what they've got to display in future in terms of de-escalation, this is clearly doing the opposite. You're telling them to do one thing while showing them another. And if we want safe wards to really work, the way in which we implement it has to be according to the safe wards values and skills and approaches. Okay. Any comments from the floor now and talk down enhancements, difficulties and issues? This is the final slide now, so we're coming to an end. I'm going to pick on you now and put you on for some final comments. Final thoughts and comments from Jeff first. You're on the floor, Jeff.
I think I just want to pick up on your last comment. Now, I've got a wonderful cartoon. I wish I could show it to you. It's basically it's a manager shouting at a nurse. You know, nursing is all about empathy and compassion, and if you can't get that through your thick head, you've got no career in this hospital. And I think that's and you know, again, it goes back to an awful lot of the Facebook and everything else where people talk about resistance and difficulties, and I think we've got to be so careful that we do stick to this. There's reasons for resistance, there's reasons for difficulties. It's not about saying these are bad nurses, but it's just about reactivating the reactivating these skills, getting people to think about them more, getting people to value, and particularly with de-escalation. De-escalation for me stops a whole host of nasty stuff, but it's one of those things that's blind. You know, you can come onto a shift and you won't have seen the tremendous efforts at de-escalating things. All they'll do is say, "Oh, it's a bit quiet today," but you know, somebody's worked incredibly hard to make that sense of peace and for patients to feel safe and valued, and although they've been agitated, that hasn't resulted in horrible things happening to them. I think this is one of those interventions that really bangs home very, very strongly just how important those skills are. And we all know them when we see them. We really, really do. And we all know them when somebody else has got them. And we really do. I think talk down is a brilliant way of just reminding everybody just how important this is. But it's just your last point is that, you know, it's not easy. De-escalation is not an easy intervention. And we have to, I think, always remember that. You know, when things are really getting very agitated, it's very, very hard to stay in that moment and perform consistently the way we'd like to.
Okay.
That's my...
Sorry, Jeff, I switched you off and on again then.
I'm just saying that's my bit. You've done. There's a great presentation, and this has been absolutely fascinating. But I think this is a fantastic intervention.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna give the floor to Julie now. Julie, final comments from Melbourne, Australia.
Is that me? Is it,
Yeah,
Julie?
yeah, you're representing the whole country now.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I am a New Zealander, so that makes it even sweeter. It was a fantastic presentation, Len. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of it, but I guess I've just been thinking as you've been talking, and I am about to start my masters, so I've written a lot down, thinking about research, and I've often thought about de-escalation and wanting to do some research around it. So I think this might be a prime opportunity for me. But I think for us here, especially at where I'm working, talk down is something that comes up a lot for our Safe Wards champions, and it's been really helpful for me today to actually think about things in a different way, and I'll be taking that back to our group. So thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome, and thanks for attending. Okay, I shall say goodbye to everybody, and I'll close this now. This recording will go up on YouTube probably within the next couple of hours. Thanks very much, and bye.